and fantastic. We are past the setup points of the arc, and we're actually getting into events in the story. And I gotta say, a big plus on the fact that we're not taking another chunk of time just having like time on the boat, or we're not gonna waste time in travel. We're gonna get over there and start up things again in a pretty sweet way that I'll talk about, obviously. But first, before we get into the chapter, I really appreciate anybody who hasn't yet, real quick, if you could subscribe. If you're interested, you like my content, thumbs up the video if you enjoy it. And like I said, any comments in here, giving your opinions about the chapter, I'd really appreciate. But for right now, I'll just go into, obviously, the whole opening bit. So, the style it looks like we're getting is kind of funny because, at least as of right now, the structure and of, like, the arc itself and how it's being at least begun, it feels like what I thought Alvarez was going to be like. How I figured they would touch down on, you know, whatever the first city is, where the first harbor town that they go to, and then it would be like they would kind of like go from a couple points, get to Empress Brigand and get to his castle, but obviously that wasn't the case. So it's like we're starting out here, the first place we're getting conflict. I think it's pretty neat. I'm really hoping that we're gonna get something like, kind of like how the Balam Alliance, how each each guild had smaller dark guilds that were, you know, subservient to them. We could have that with Goldal, and it's like you could have a couple powerful like people just kind of brought together because like, oh well, these are the aces of like the top guilds that, you know, are subordinates to Goldal. So you can do something I think really easy with that, with getting like strong characters, because like people gotta remember, it's not like the Spriggan 12. Obviously, we're not talking about August or Larcade when we talk about like the general kind of level of the Spriggan. But it's like a lot of the Spriggan weren't like crazy anomalies. They were just very powerful people, and a lot of them were pretty young. And it's not like they were all like within the same family or from the same town. They were scattered from the continent and all had just different various ways of why they were so powerful. So it's one of the reasons I think with Diablo's different. They got like a way to fast pass game more powerful with eating dragons. But with things like Goldal, it's like, oh, you have them as the #1 people of this thing. It obviously is able to put them at a pedestal where it's like, this is the peak. So like the peak of another thing being really high up is believable. And I've always liked that Mishima does that with certain just kind of like subcategories. He'll have like generally like a lot of them be like okay, but like he'll have like one be really good. And that way we have stuff like, oh, with people who practice spiritual arts, curses, and stuff like alchemy, even though there's going to be seemingly way more in quantity powerful wizards, there are some powerful alchemists and obviously the other things. That it's like this branch of like powers, if you decide not to be a wizard, you decide to pick something else, you're not hopeless. Like for instance, just as a really quick example, because it'll be something that people will kind of think about, and it'll be like, yeah, like think about another series where it's like you have a kind of, not like a set, but like a class. Like you have like Bleach, you have like the Soul Reapers, primarily Soul Reapers, Arankars, and Quincy, just kind of going off those three. And obviously, well, Hollow's Arankar is tied in, but you know what I mean. So you have those strengths, like there's like a large spectrum, obviously, of people in that category. None of those are just like trash. Like, comparison Fullbringers and stuff. Not all of them, because some of them are really powerful. So, you know what I mean, though? It's like there are some good people in this, where it's like, you look at, like, One Piece has pirates, but it's like, was at the very beginning the mountain bandits, and it's like, imagine being a mountain bandit and you're all fodder, and it's like, there's not like one strong person among your entire profession. They're all just like nameless background characters. That would suck. Like, I don't think there's any powerful pirates in Fairy Tail, like realistic pirates. I know there's like some filler pirates, just like early dudes at the beginning when Urza rode the pirate ship over to Galuna Island. But besides that, an actual straight up one, not like I'm gonna remember some character who just had a parrot at some point randomly in an anime episode. But anyway, like these guys, because I try not to go too crazy, usually talking about like stuff like why power levels are not important for a series, but like consistency wise is important, because you don't want things to You don't want something kind of like one of the problems with Boruto. It's like, you know how powerful some of the people are, but then you see like really weird smaller scale fights, and it looks a little strange when you think about it. And then obviously like people like who are way younger and somehow able to catch up. It just makes things strange when there's not a level of consistent thought put into like stuff like that, because you got to keep the rules and the setting of the verse within the confines of what's been established. But these guys, this guy, first off, I just want to say this coal mining dude, Iwashita, I like his design. We don't get a lot of these like just straight meathead designs from Mishima. And on top of that, I really like his pickaxe hammer. Like, that thing is really cool looking. I am a fan of this guy. I'm hoping he's just not complete fodder. My like wish list for him is like he fights Natsu. Natsu just has to go into like lightning flame dragon mode, and then like maybe he goes into fire dragon king mode, but at that point he just runs over this guy. It's like, I don't expect this guy to be really high up, but I'm just hoping that he's decent enough that it's like, oh yeah, these are the entry opponents that we're going to be seeing, and this is already like where we're at. Like, the bar going into it is like, it's like, imagine it's like the weakest guys are at lightning flame dragon mode Natsu, and it's like, well, not like the weakest relevant people, because it's going to be like, I imagine each of these alchemy guilds would be kind of like in comparison, some like a guild kind of like Quattro Cerberus or Mermaid Heel, where they have people who are overall in like their field probably pretty good, but like relevant wise, no, they've got like one person from each. Like when you looked at Quattro Cerberus, it's like you only had Bacchus, and then realistically Mermaid Heel, you really only had Kagura. Or it's like for these ones, like this guild, like maybe it's just pretty much when it comes to like strength, Iwashita is going to be the only guy who is able to do anything to any main cast members, where it's like he's their ace, but like their ace is able just to contend with primary cast members. He can't actually beat any of them, kind of thing. I think that'd be fine, because like as long as they're able to put up a fight, I'm fine with it. I just don't want this guy to be like, you know, one shot thrown away, and it's like, why introduce this guy, give him a neat, cool, unique weapon, and then just kind of get rid of him? Again, things like we're going to see, like, alchemy and, like, whatever his alchemical abilities. Assuming he's an alchemist. I don't think we actually get a straight statement that he's an alchemist in the chapter. Like, let me get back to actually just talking about the chapter, because I've rambled for, like, 8 minutes almost about some stuff in the chapter, because it's like a really scattered chapter, but in a really good way. I thought this chapter was really solid, and it's probably one of the better, like, first chapter into a new city ones that we've seen. I think the only one that would be, like, in general above this would be, like, the chapter we saw Alderaan, just because, like, that was just such a cool chapter of, like, oh yeah, you're on a city that's on a hand, and you saw these monstrously gigantic dragon. It was just a really neat surprise, badass reveal, and it was like, when it was like, yeah, he's the wood dragons were the biggest, it was like, yeah, we really went heavy on that one. Made him biggest boy in the series. But they're just kind of talking again, and there's a little bit of information, and I can't really say if it's the fan translations or if it's just because of the manga. It's like just giving us light details on purpose, but very light details. So essentially they're doing, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to do a summary. And this is what I mean when I'm saying it's on purpose. So the first, let me just say, the first page, it's, you know, North Sea of Ishgal, Blast Sea, which I like that we actually got a name of the sea. I mean, it's nice that we're just getting a little bit of geographical stuff. But there's just, Lucy's pretty much just giving a recap on recent events, pretty much saying like, okay, you know, we're going back to Giltina, we're going towards an alchemist guild called Gold Owl, where Athena is there. It's this living doll that has the power to defeat the dragon gods. And then it goes into talking to Minerva, who does like another recap. She just does the same thing, which again is very interesting. There's not just Minerva, but I mean, like, she's the one that I think is the most interesting, because she's like repeating Lucy more so. Because, like, the first parts, they're just kind of talking, getting there, like, why we are here reminded. But then Jalal is doing, like, oh, you know, the White Wizard is said to be on par with Zareth. I think that's a different one, because that's a reminder of something that was brought up at the beginning of 100 Years Quest, not Lucy saying it in this chapter. Because it's like she mentioned, you know, oh, it has strength to defeat the dragon gods, but that's not obviously the same inverse thing as like a comparison to Zareth. So then it goes into Minerva, who again is summarizing it. But when they're saying, oh, the White Wizard Athena is a doll made as a weapon, and then you have Minerva again saying it was Elisarius' disciple who made her, and then right after that, it's like, oh, you know, what became the disciple? And that's where we're at right now. We don't really know anything about that other than the character disappeared. Urza says it all happened 100 years ago. We heard she died. That is the thing again that I mean. Is this a fan translation thing where they just put a pronoun in there, or is this character actually female? And it's like, we got nothing in the previous one other than Elefsaria had a apprentice who obviously went to make Athena, disappeared, who knows. But is this an intentional little nod to just say like, hey, just so you know? It's just a thing that, because the characters might not, because like the characters probably know a little bit more information that we just don't know, because it was said in the scene we didn't see, and they haven't had a reason to give like the full context that they have. Because I would imagine they have much, but it's like small bits like that where it's like they probably know the name of the person, we just don't have it yet. Like, I bet it's like Elefsaria probably gave a brief description of this person while they were talking to him before they left. Because, like, we see a certain amount, but obviously it's not like those gaps between time and events, like, don't happen. It's obviously stuff happens there. It's just inverse that we as viewers aren't able to witness. So, I think that is just a really, really interesting little nod. Maybe not a nod, but crumbs. It could just be the translators putting something in there to make it easy to read. But if it is like not the case, I think it's definitely something that will have value in like a later portion of the arc. Like this old lady that Lucy runs into, what if that's the character, like straight up? Or what if it's going to lead to that character? Right now it's still just unknown, but still I think that the mystery right now around that and getting piece by piece little bits of information is making it pretty intriguing. But they get to this new place, I think it was Furin it's called? Phelon, sorry. Phelon? I think it's Phelon. I would assume it'd be Phelon. I wonder what it's supposed to like be a reference to, because usually there's like, it's like a play on it, so it's probably short for something. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything that's like, that goes, I'll just go Phelon. Phelon? I'll call Phelon. But yeah, it's just essentially, it's a city that focuses on mining, gets ores and stuff that is used in alchemy. Again, cool. That's just a nice little world building bit. You don't really need to go further into the depths of that. I think we'll get like a decent amount with Iwashita and stuff with his guild, but you don't need to go, I think, that deep into that, because it doesn't, like, it's easy to understand. Obviously they're miners. They dig up, I guess, coal and other minerals and they sell it. It's a business that they do as a guild. Understandable. It's just a neat little thing to add, I think, because it adds to the world, but it also adds to like the system of alchemy, because it's like, oh well, yeah, we have a place that goes into pretty much funds all of alchemists and stuff with them. Ooh, that actually makes me a little worried, because if this is important, think about this. If this is important, and this is like a clearly advanced city technologically, like more so than the average city in Fairy Tail. Like, I imagine wherever the Machias live is probably more advanced, but this has clearly got like a degree of industrialism involved in it. Probably less with technology as much. Probably like a degree of technology, but also alchemy pretty much covering up, you know, areas that they don't have certain tech in. But I really like the style that it has, you know, the big factory with these big billowing smokestacks. And it's really cool because you see all this, and obviously, if you've ever been in a town or a city like this that has like a thick smell, and that's something that's being used for the plot, and I actually really like that because it can be used for multiple characters. Natsu brings up that the smell of the city is very unique, and because of that, he can't pick up Lucy's scent, and so that means that all the like dragon slayers should be hindered on their sense of smell. They should still have their, you know, their hearing, but their sense of smell, I think, is better for them when it comes to tracking. So for them right now, I imagine this is going to be a pretty well split kind of event, because I think, can anybody else really even locate anybody? Because, the general thing would be to use the Dragon Slayers. Maybe Lucy could do something cool with Pixis, but I doubt Pixis really is going to be able to come in clutch like that. I'll be surprised. He'll be a champ if so. But they're just kind of, doing their thing. They get to a new location. They're seeing their sights, just enjoying themselves. I'm happy that Sabretooth is with them. It's sad that Rufus and Orga were not included at all. I mean, we can't have too many characters. It's I'm hoping at some point Mishima greenlights the Twin Dragons of Sabretooth volume, a sequel, where Orga gets a chapter and a half of backstory, because that dude, I don't understand how Mishima shafted him as bad as he did. And then with Rufus got a little bit. Rufus is cool enough and his magic is neat enough that it's easy to slip by, but it's dang. Either way, Yukino and Yukino Minerva, I'm very curious as what they're going to do this arc, just because they are an odd addition. Minerva, Yukino, I feel like Yukino can be very interesting in the story, based on how she interacts with Lucy, because Lucy, so I'll do a video on it still at some point. I gotta get to that. Lucy doesn't need Yukino technically to have all 13 keys, because she can use her Aquarius Gemini star dress and make her. So technically, during those 16 seconds, Lucy could have all 13 keys. But outside of that, we have a scenario where they're gonna have all of them there. On top of that, they can use another spell that hasn't been used in a long time, is they could try Zodiac. I think that would be really neat if they were involved doing that at some point in this arc. But besides that, Minerva doing something I think is very intriguing, because I could see her character getting closer, higher up in power. Depends on what Mishima does with her. If it was imagine current Minerva is low Spriggan level. She can contend with the low people, which I think is fine. She had some decent feats with the Historias and stuff back in Alvarez, so it's not a year plus her getting to, low levels of that tier isn't unbelievable. And then it's you could have, she actually does still have her demon form that she got in Tartaros, and it's she just kind of shifts it, but it's now she can control it, and it's just a general boost. And then maybe you can use that also to kind of set up some foreshadowing with Gray. Maybe Gray will get something along a devil boost as well. But do something like that, advance Minerva. That would be really cool. And then have Minerva fight. I really like the idea of Lucy and Urza fighting the Signario sisters. But if Urza and Minerva do it, all I ask is for something really cool to kind of be why Minerva is way more powerful. Unless it's, because it's I imagine that Minerva would otherwise be a support character, and it's 1v1, or I guess 2v1, but it's I don't imagine Urza just getting a really solid support would be able to handle both Signario sisters. I really like the idea more so of Lucy doing it. I think it'd be cool if it was actually Minerva, I'm trying to think, I really like the idea of Minerva and Rogue duoed in a fight, and then Yukino and Sting. Just because it'd be a set with them where you wouldn't have expected it as directly, and it will be neat to see. Do something with the Sabretooth ships. But on top of that, I think it would be easy to kind of get an opening fight with them without having to do a lot. Because you have to keep in mind, obviously, the amount of characters there are right now. I'm sad Godjill and Laxus aren't involved at the moment. Maybe we'll get them later. But at the moment, the trade out is Sting, Rogue, and Jalal. So we'll see how that all transpires. I'm still hoping at the time we get to God Serena, we're going to have Godjill come back. Because, Laxus doesn't need anything this arc. I know Laxus being involved would have been cool. But I do think that Godjill should just get that revenge on God Serena. And if not, I would love to see it. Godjill's in such a weird spot, because it's there are reasons for him to be involved in the story, and it's very easy to involve in the story, but obviously, the stuff with, pregnant Levy, he has such a strong character reason to just not do anything outside of that it's hard to find a reason for him to actually be in the story unless he's forced. You know, because it's like, I like that about Gajil. It's like, it's frustrating because you want him in the story. You want him to be active and doing stuff and like have, you know, get some cool new moments, maybe get like some cool new abilities and have some spotlight. But it's like, you know, it's great for his character for him to just say like, I've got bigger things to do right now, because like to him, obviously this is way more important than like power levels and having some battles. Like he's got this he's got to take care of, and it's like other people can do it. It's not like it's not like he's the main character where it's all on his shoulders. Like he can do things, but it's like, unless, like, I imagine if for Gajil, it's like, unless something was like put on him as a responsibility, which this is already something obviously that is responsibility, he wouldn't go seeking out anything right now. Like, if it was, like, somebody showed him, like, oh, this is Metallicana's last wish, and he wanted you to do it, he'd probably be like, okay. But it's like, if some guy showed up, and he's like, adventurer, please, I need your help, he'd be like, guilds that way, go talk to them, I'm busy today, I don't have time for this. But, back to the actual events, there's a nice little nod as well in this, and this is one thing I like about the chapter, and I don't think it's a nod, I guess, it's more like again, potential crumbs. One thing I like about this chapter is there's a lot of just kind of small, there's like small like teases, like the idea of like these, you can't tell if they're new plot points coming in, just kind of like being dangled in front of you, but they're like just enough for me to go maybe. It's like the stuff like, oh, you know, the bit about, oh, Eleftheria's student is a female, question mark. There's this bit where while they're in the town and looking at all this stuff to do with, you know, alchemy and minerals, they see, like, just some cool stones, and out of these, like, gems, like, Happy's like, can Gajil eat these? And Carla's like, you know, iron and gems are two completely different things. What is the point of this? Is it just conversation? Like, I get, like, the Happy one, but, like, the thing is, like, I think if it was played more of a joke, I think Happy would have been responded to by Natsu or somebody, to where Natsu would, like, make some crack at Gajil. From Carla saying it in a very serious response that's just, like, saying, oh, you know, these are two actually different things. It's like, is that Mishima just, like, making that kind of idea put in your head to where later it'll be important, and then it's like, you just see where this kind of, like, small, tiny little nod was put up. And again, there's multiple things in the chapter that do this. And that's one of the things, that, again, that I really like about this chapter. But again, it's not one of these things does it that makes me go, oh, this is potentially a thing. Obviously, all of them are potentially things. But it's like, there's so many coincidences that it, like, after a point, it stops being coincidences. And it's like, you're connecting points to draw a line. And you're like, okay, I'm seeing where this is leading to, maybe. Like, you see Sting and Rogue hanging out. They're just kind of, everybody's all split. The thing about Rogue, again, that's odd in the chapter, it's like there's multiple panels where Rogue is literally his silhouette is drawn and then it's just filled in black, which I really like. I really like that as like a character thing, where it's like, unless you're actually looking at his face, he just looks like a shadow on the panel. I'm a fan of that, actually. I don't know if that's intentional or what. That one I think is just funny. But then there's, like, Sai again, and Sai has this thing he's, like, thinking about, obviously, like, what happened with Gray, and, like, remembering when he turned into Juvia. And he's, like, upset that, like, he's hanging out with Wendy, and he's like, oh, man, he's popular with girls. I saw some people talking about this on Twitter. You gotta keep in mind, in the verse, Wendy is, like, 15 to maybe 16, even though she's just a loli. And in I think it's 12 or 13 is, like, their legal drinking age. So probably 15 to 16 is like, normal. Like, because, like, wasn't that, like, a lot of general ages in like, fantasy worlds in general? I think. So it's, like, obviously it's a little strange. It's making Sai definitely looks like a little bit of a weirdo for jumping to conclusions. It's like, you see a guy with, like, a very much younger girl, and that's the first thing you think of. It's like, dude, what if, like, it could be a lot of things. It's not even like what's funny is like he's doing the thing like the goofy face he makes with Frosh, but it's like I don't know how he looks at that and thinks romance of any kind. It looks like Gray is like enjoying some really good candy or something. It just looks like he just took like he just ate a candy that he hasn't had since he was like 7 that he really liked, and he's just hit with a wave of nostalgia and he's just enjoying himself. Where it's like how are you turning that into any form of like romance to any shade? Sai is definitely weird, but I think part of it is obviously that he just has he has this head that jumps to conclusions, and I think maybe that's the point. And maybe, like, that's what he's going to be used as a character for, is, like, he'll be used for some character progression pushing because he does this. Because, like, he assumes whoever somebody views as weak is going to be weak. He assumes turning them into a girl will make them weaker, which is even more confusing when you think about the large scale of, like, his knowledge. Because I talked about it a bit. Depending on the people you transform. Because, say it's, like, treasure hunters, when it's like no powers and it's just the physical body, like not talking about like people enhance your magic and stuff and other forms of energy, it's just physical abilities. It seems like obviously men are way stronger in general than the women, but it's like there's a lot of power systems and abilities and even technology in the verse where it's like turning them into a woman doesn't really, like, in real life maybe, but it's like also they might have a gun, but also in this verse, like, you could easily, like, what happens if you, like, it's like, what if you go up to a guy who is, like, a strong fighter, but you just don't want to deal with, like, his hand-to-hand combat or whatever the fuck, so it's like, you use the love bond on him, and it turns him into a woman, but, like, this guy's, like, in love with a powerful wizard, and then it's like, you just screw yourself. Like, Sai's abilities are, like, so situational. Like, he should be a support character. He should be, like, an intel support character. Like, who only fights people that he looks into so he knows what his abilities are going to do beforehand. Like, he's not a smart guy, like, very clearly. But after that point, we have Urza and Jalal, and people were talking about this as well. This is one of the other parts that I was talking about, though, when it came to just, like, these weird crumb bits. Like, Urza starts saying, like, you know, have you thought about joining Fairy Tail? And Jalal's like, I've considered it, but I've still committed crimes. And she's like, you know, weren't you pardoned by that? And he's like, oh, no, it's different. She's like, how long do you plan to keep punishing yourself? And it's like, just a kind of a bit around that, obviously, like, the whole Jalal not having this, like, view set like he deserves it, like he has the right to, like, be happy. And I don't think it's that. I know a lot of people were mad saying, like, oh, Mishima's not letting this progress. One, there would be, like, that doesn't make sense, because the whole bit about him joining Fairy Tail, clearly it's being brought up again, so it's not like it's a dead plot point. So it's like, clearly Mishima's acknowledging it, so it's just one of those things where it has to be obviously brought up again, because now Jalal's in the story. The plot point set up about him joining the guild was obviously established long before, well, not like long, because it was I'm trying to remember the exact point. I think it was after Elentier, right? Yeah, I think it was after Elentier, right before we went into the Dogre Labyrinth, I think. Oh god, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Or was it before Elentier? I think it was after Elentier. Either way, you have that. It's like he joins up. I'll have to look into it. It's gonna bother me. I'll look it up before the end of this. But he ends up joining. He ends up thinking about joining, and it's like, it's the way that it's presented. And for the people that are mad, like, again, they're like, oh, Jalal's dragging his feet again. Look at the way that it's presented when Jalal is asked about joining the guild, and what I mean about Happy talking about Gajo eating gems, and then Carla gives a very, like, direct, not funny, not like a gag response. When Jalal is asked about it, he's smiling, he's looking down, he's like trying not to make direct eye contact with Urza, but not in like a guilty or like nervous way. He's not sweating. There's no like of those like strain marks in animes and stuff. There's no shading that makes it look like he's thinking about something darker. And then the part where he's like, I was still committed crimes, it's like such a small panel and you only see the back. And then when she's like, oh, you know, weren't you partying? He's like, that's a different matter. Again, there's no like worry indicators on the panel as he talks. There's nothing that has like a bit where it shows like Jalal is having some form of real internal problem. Like it's like look at the chapters where Jalal talked about it before versus now. I don't think it is at all. I think it's Jalal just telling Urza. Because think about this. What is Jalal? A bad liar, canonically. He's not trying to make eye contact with Urza when he said this. He's looking away. Even when she's like, weren't you pardoned? He looks for, like, it's like he's looking down at first. Urza says, like, you know, weren't you pardoned for those crimes? He then looks away. But he's not frowning. There's nothing that looks stressful. I personally think it's like Gray, where Gray has a thing is like, I need to meet this expectation before I actually like am with Juvia. My bet is like Jalal has something that he has to do before he joins Fairy Tail. Like maybe he has to admit his feelings to Urza, because obviously the difference between the ships is the context of why certain things don't occur. With like think about it like this: Elfman and Evergreen, they didn't have any reason that their characters were like personality-wise really preventing anything. It was more of they would just argue, and then eventually, like, we saw them going on a date, so it's like, they just kind of seem to let things progress. Levi and Gajil, just things seem to progress naturally. With Natsu, it's hard because Lucy's the one, I think, more so that isn't as aware, because I think Lucy still is one of the things where it's like, she'll think, like, the thought will be, like, in the back of her head, but it'll like be immediately snuffed out anytime she thinks about it. Whereas like Natsu, it's one of those things where he just doesn't really think about the ideas of romance. Like he is to Urza, or sorry, he is to Lucy, I think, what Urza is to Jalal, where Urza seems to just like, Urza doesn't really seem to give a shit if people in the guild see her naked at all, because she thinks them as family. But it's like Jalal could like just anytime, not even that, Jalal could literally just see her do anything embarrassing and it's like a meltdown. She goes from stoic warrior to, you know, as she is, like a love-struck girl in her early 20s. Like, it's just, it's that shift. It's obviously not the same for Natsu, but it's the same thing where it's like, it has to do with their character, and it's just at one specific person, so it's just like this weird variable that makes it so there has to be like a specific event in the story that has that character kind of like get to why when they're going to, you know, progress that or do whatever confessions reveal and get to that point. Whereas like someone like Gray is at the point where he's acknowledged it. Juvia obviously has feelings for him. The only thing that's keeping them away is like he's got something that says like he's waiting for it. He's got a plan that he needs to feel comfortable with in protecting Juvia in order to be with her. And I'm guessing Jalal has something too. Just because I don't think that Jalal would be saying this without it seeming like, without it being a more serious thing. Oh, I almost pressed. It's like gonna play Lord of the Rings in the background. A mistake. So it's like it's like I read this part and I think it's just a little bit of kind of like added bits, because it's like when you're looking at Jalal and she's like trying to talk to him, and like Jalal just like looks like he's just like trying to not say something, but when Urza's like, you know, you can't see who's right next to you, and she looks upset and he looks over like, fuck, like he looks concerned, like there's always those things that's like you know, say like, for instance, you know, whether it's like, you know, a significant other or a family member, if you have something you maybe can't tell them yet, like for instance, it's like, oh, they think everybody forgot about their birthday, you got them a present but it's a surprise, and they get sad because they think people forgot. It's like you have to let that kind of go until you get to the point, even though it might upset them. And it's like, but it's like once you get to that point where it's like, oh fuck, do I do it now or like what do I do? And I think that's where Jalal's at. I think Jalal's at a spot where he's like, he knows that at this point, I think that what he's doing is going to upset Urza without her knowing why he's doing what he's doing. Because it's like, if he was serious about all the guilt stuff, I don't think the scene would have went the way that it did. Then we get this little, like, silly guy with a turban, and which, I'm actually happy that this guy is the one with Urza and Jalal, because every Mishima antagonist group, whether that it's a 3-minion group that's gonna go intercept some guys, or the 10 main bad guy group of the arc, there's always one silly guy, and the one silly guy is not fighting Natsu, so I'm hoping that Iwashita is gonna be a decent fighter. But this guy takes a picture of Jalal and Urza, who then disappear. I don't know where they are. I'm guessing they're inside the guy's camera or something. I'm not too sure, but they're all kind of squished together. So it's like, that's probably going to be some, just some general Urza Jalal shipping stuff that we're going to be getting in a little bit. Lucy, on the other hand, she's hanging out with Happy, who runs into some lady who looks like freaking Sans. Who, again, could this be the disciple of Elysaria? I don't think so. Like, it could be. I'm guessing no, just because I feel like it's too early to get this character already. But I guess it's like an informant who, when Lucy's talking to, is like, oh, first question, it's like, oh, who's Gold Owl? It's like, oh, that's the greatest alchemist guild on the continent. Everybody knows that, after all. And it's like, then Lucy asks, is there anyone named Athena here? And she's like, oh, what an interesting guest we have. And then she just kind of like has this like smoke and stuff go around her. So it's like, I'm guessing she's not just going to be informant. She's going to be a match for Lucy. I hope that Lucy gets a really good fight. But I would like Lucy to, like, out of the 3 fights, assume these are fights. I assume the camera guy is going to be like, he's a tricky hacks fodder who, once you get out of it, he's not going to be that dangerous. I'm hoping that Iwashita just puts up a decent fight against Natsu, because he's probably going to be more like a direct brawler after being like a giant buff dude with a pickaxe hammer. And this lady, I'm hoping that she's like the strongest, but Lucy does the best. Just because I think it'd be really cool if it's like this person Lucy just has like a really good fight against. It's not like this is like a decent, imagine it's a pretty good opponent, maybe not as powerful as Kiria, but somebody who's still really tricky and strong, and then Lucy is able just to pretty much handle, not like no diff, but like very low to maybe like a medium level of difficulty, where she maybe gets like hit once or twice, but other than that, she handles this lady pretty fairly. And then the last guy, you just have a bunch of fodder, Jump Natsu. They have all got smaller versions of that pickaxe hammer. But then this guy shows up, Iwashita, and he's got a much bigger, better one. And he's saying that he is from a coal miners guild, Gaga Rock. I'm guessing they're alchemists, just because it's an alchemy enemy-themed arc. But another thing is, like, he knows about Fairy Tail, which is, like, not the same as the other ones. It's obviously, like, it indicates that there's knowledge of the Fairy Tail group coming in. But it obviously puts the question of, like, who's already aware of them, and is it, like, does Duke know that Fairy Tail's coming, or is he, like, already know he's got, like, crystal ball looking at him right now? Because at that point, it's going to depend on, like, what's the level of insight and intel he has. Could he just be a character who's like, oh, yeah, I will send out, like, a drone or something to see, but his resources are limited? Or is it, like, he just has the ability to communicate and do things all over the place? Because obviously alchemy and technology can do some crazy things that maybe, like, the characters otherwise can't really do. And it's not like it would be a crazy invention in the verse itself, because communication locker already exists. So we got a couple just neat stuff opening up this arc. Just a couple, like, short fights, I'm guessing, just a couple skirmishes. Like I said, I don't think that any of these guys are going to be crazy strong. I'd like to believe it's just going to be like, oh, this dude, Iwashita, he's the strongest of this area. This lady is, like, a really powerful old alchemist. She's been here for, like, 80 years doing alchemy. And it's one of those things where she just has a lot of, like, age and experience. And then maybe this camera dude just has, like, a really broken item that is made that does, like, weird shit. And then you just have, like, a couple matches with those. I would hope that Iwashita, though, like, if he's a decent fight, though, I'm hoping he becomes an ally. Like, he seems like a cool dude. I imagine he's not a bad guy, because, like, these guys don't seem like villains. Like, the city seems fine. It just seems like these guys just probably got told to jump the main cast and go after Fairy Tail. So I don't think that he's aware that they're going after, like, the main one of said guild. So good luck to him. I don't imagine this guy's really going to push Natsu crazy, But I'm just hoping that it's like Natsu just doesn't like slap him around in his base form. Like, I don't want that. Like, unless it's like Natsu in base is able to slap this guy, but this guy then uses like alchemy to have like a power up for him, and then Natsu has to, you know, go up a form or 2 in power. Maybe not 2. I expect like Lightning Flame Dragon mode would be like absolutely great for me, for Iwashita. Luckily, I would guess that Mishima is going to open the next chapter with this fight. Maybe not the whole chapter, but I would love just to see a little bit of what this guy can do. Maybe we get some cool stuff where, you know, he smashes like a chunk of the land, and then he can mess with all the terrain he's destroyed and changes it up all with alchemy into different minerals and materials. Who knows? Right now, we're just getting in again those first crumbs and first little bits of the arc. All I really have to say right now, again, when it came to this chapter, solid. It wasn't like a crazy like mind bend, but there was a lot of stuff I liked. There was a lot of stuff that just seemed intentionally done in a specific way. That like if you just kind of like look at it and add a little bit of detectiveness and a little bit of skepticism, it's like it just makes you go, Because like the Jalal stuff again, just look. Anybody who doesn't believe me, just go back and look at like just that quick interaction, and then go back and look at when Jalal actually had that serious conversation with Urza when he like did like the whole fake fiance thing. It's way different, and Urza is aware that he's a bad liar. So if he has figured out at some point that like she knows that what she can tell when he's lying, he just has to freaking be careful about it. That's it. But we'll see. Anyway, other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter and what your thoughts are about the current events. Do you like these new designs? I mean, none of them are crazy. Like, you get a silly little goofy looking guy with the turban and camera. The old lady looks kind of spooky. I like the skeleton eyes. And then buff dude with the pickaxe looks pretty cool. Other than that, though, comment below. Thumbs up, friend, like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. When that, I appreciate you. Sorry, subscribe. Then I thank you all for listening. Bye.